In this video, we're going to look at how within 10 minutes you can have a web app running that allows you to view and work with PDFs and other documents. I'm using Windows, but the same ideas work with Mac OS and Linux. Okay, so type npx create-vite at latest. In my case, it's going to need to download the latest version of Vite to 6.3.1. Okay, that's great. It's now going to ask us some questions like a project name, and we'll call it Vite-js. It's going to know which framework to use, and we'll choose React. It's going to know which variant, and we'll say JavaScript. And now it's gone and scaffolded the project, and we're ready to run. So let's navigate to our new folder, Vite-js, run npm install to install the dependencies, which will take a few moments. And now we're ready to actually run the project. At the moment, this is just the standard React project. There's no special Apryse code in there, but it does show that our system is correctly configured. Okay, we'll put that aside for one moment. And now let's go into VS Code using code. You'll see that we've got a whole lot of files are being created already within our project. But most of this is things we don't need. So if we go into app.css, we can delete all of the contents of that. And then within app.jsx, we can remove most of what's in there. Nearly all of the code, those logos, the use state, and that const for set count and count. We don't need those. We're going to put more code back in a few moments. Now, let's install the Apryse WebViewer. And we do that using npm install @pdftron/WebViewer. This will download the files that are needed into Node modules. But because we need these files to be available on the client side when the project's running, we now need to copy some of those files from Node modules into a public folder that's available to React at runtime. So we need to copy the core and UI folders, and we'll put them into a new folder within public called lib-WebViewer. Great. Okay, now let's start rebuilding our code. So let's import WebViewer from @pdftron WebViewer. Now we need to create a div within the return function, which we'll give a class name of WebViewer to so that we can style it later. And we're going to use a reference of viewer because this is where WebViewer will be mounted once it's been instantiated. Let's define what viewer is. So using useRef, and we'll just set that to null as we haven't started it yet. Now we need to instantiate WebViewer, and we do that within a useEffect block. Now typically a useEffect block with no dependencies would fire just once when the component starts. But in recent versions of React, it will fire a second time because of StrictMode, and that will cause us problems, but we will also see how to work around those problems later on. Okay, so let's create a web viewer, and it takes some options, and it needs to know the viewer element where it will be located. We already know that. That's going to be viewer, so we'll set that to viewer.current. And this will return a promise, so we can then get the instance from the promise when it resolves, and we could work with that if we wanted to. I'm not going to do that here, but I have set it up. Now within the WebViewer options, we need to specify the path to the files that we've just copied into the public folder. So that was lib/WebViewer. We need to specify a license key, and you can get a free trial license key from the Apryse website. I'll just paste mine in for now. We can also specify an initial document that will be loaded. This could be a local file or it could be a URL. For now, we'll use a URL. That's looking good. So if we save this and then actually run it again and reload the page, very quickly we see WebViewer, but it disappears again. And this is a CSS problem. So let's fix CSS. In the index.css file, there's a lot of stuff we don't need. In fact, we can get rid of virtually everything. and just leave place items center within the body. And we'll also add something for the WebViewer class to style it, and we'll set the height to 80% of the viewport height and the width to 80% of the viewport width. Awesome. Now if we save that again and go back to our browser, now we can see we've got WebViewer and it looks great. But this is where we have the problem. We have a second WebViewer, and this has been caused by StrictMode in React. It's not a real problem because in production builds that wouldn't occur. You could solve it by deleting StrictMode from your code. But StrictMode is there to help catch memory leaks. So let's see if we have a better solution than just deleting it. What we could do instead, we've already used a useRef. Let's create another one, Instantiated, and we'll initialize that to false. Now let's add a conditional statement and say, if it's not been instantiated, then we're going to create a WebViewer, and then we'll say it has been instantiated. This means it will only fire once. Now we only have one WebViewer, and we still have it set as strict mode, so this is a good result. You could take that code out when you move to production, but for development, that's a good way to start. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful. If you've enjoyed it, please click on subscribe. Catch you next time. Bye for now.